We already opened the meeting at 6:30, but I'd like to go back and ask everyone, starting from my left, to state their names. Board members.
Vasilios Houpos.
Diane Stefani.
Scott Nelson.
Jim Baumstark.
And then we have two people on audio or Zoom. Could you guys state your
Julie
name?
Moon.
And James Dolan.
Thank you. So we have 6 people here at our meeting. I would like to first ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved. Baumstark.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Vasilios?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the regular and executive session minutes.
So moved. Baumstark.
Second Stefani.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Baumstark,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Supos,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Moon,
Aye.
And Alex is not with us. Motion carries. We're coming to our communications section. Dr. Deli?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining our meeting this evening. I have 2 items I'd like to cover. One is just some general comments that are, I think, very important to point out for our community. As we know, Kathy Kajigian will be moving on to the North Cook Regional Office of Education starting July 1st. Kathy, we're very excited for that opportunity for you. We have to give you many thanks, though, for the contributions that you've helped us in achieving over the time that you've been with us. And there have been many. Your position title doesn't really explain what it is that you do and the gravity of the work. It just doesn't. You have to be able to work closely with you to know that. This board knows the work that you've done. I know it. Members of your team know that. The larger school community knows it. And we just want to thank you for it. I mean, strategic planning, your commitment to wellness, equity, our social media presence. I mean, the list goes on. But you really do represent the quintessential communications specialist that you are. And, you know, the emphasis that you put on the human relationships is what I think sets you apart in many ways. We can continue to be friends, but only as long we have to be able to agree that the Oxford comma is grammatically optional. And we will leave it to APS and APA to sort out the details of that. But if we can at least come to agreement on that, we are lifelong friends. Thank you. Say anything, or you don't have to. I just didn't want to leave you hanging.
Thank you.
Do any board members want to speak about Kathy at all?
Thank you for all of the good times and some of the times that were a little rougher, and for hanging in there with us. I appreciate it, Kathy.
And I've learned a lot in how to write an email. It used to be just bullet points. Now it's more than just bullet points, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the new logos.
Yes.
Kathy, this district wouldn't be where we are without you. The school buildings that we're in right now are really important, and you did a great job helping us with the referendum. We're going to miss you, and I want you to know that technically you haven't left yet, so.
I've got some work to do in the next few days.
Okay. But
And I plan to do it.
Good. I'm really going to miss you, and I hope that you come and visit us, because we are a better place when you were here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been a true honor to serve this community. It will always be in my heart, all of you and all of my friends that I've made throughout Glenview. And I plan to come back, and I'll be watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. If we can, Kathy, also just tee up our next item. I can't. You're going to help me drive that, right?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. So, I wanted to just be able to put out for the community, and I will apologize in advance for the redundancy, but I think this is a topic that's important, that we bring people along with us every step of the way, because it is a long and rather onerous process. But we want to be very transparent about what we've been talking about in terms of our relationship with True North. So just in review, we have shared with the board and the community on 2 different occasions, on February 13th, which probably seems like eons ago, and then again on May 20th, information regarding the history of the relationship between our school district and True North, formerly NSSED, the evolution of District 34's ability and capacity to serve its students, and the financial impact of our current relationship. And what we believe is in our best interest in terms of ending our membership relationship with the organization. We've talked about the costs associated with being a member, the fact that in order to stop being a member, it requires us to go through several steps that are along a continuum. And so I just want to provide a basic timeline of what has happened so far, what will continue to happen in terms of next steps. And I'll apprise the board and the community as we work through these. But just for review, back in December on the 21st, I did meet with Dr. Snyder, the superintendent at True North. I explained to him our intentions of leaving the cooperative, reviewed with him the reasons why. That was a conversation. Then in May, District 34 enacted the voluntary withdrawal procedure under the Articles of Agreement with the True North organization, which really starts with a comprehensive evaluation of our special education programming. There are 3 component parts to that. I will summarize. One is to analyze our district's ability to serve students with special needs, to take into account the transitional elements between, and I'm paraphrasing from the Articles of Agreement, between the elementary school district and the high school district. This is all under Section 3C, 1, 2, and 3. And then finally, to do a review of the district's estimated proportionate share of liabilities in the district. We'll talk more about that when the time comes, but those are the elements that are included in this program evaluation that we need to undertake, and we're in the process of doing that now, identifying a third-party consultant, rather, to help us with that process. Another important and required dynamic of the withdrawal process under the voluntary procedures is to have a parent and staff engagement session. We have one planned for June 25th. It will be held at Westbrook. And so that'll be an opportunity for information sharing and feedback. And then by December 31st of 24, it can certainly be sooner, but no later than then, this board would approve a petition that would be filed with True North wishing to withdraw. That's not the end of the process, but that those are important deadlines that have to be met along the way. So I don't know if you have any questions. This is basically all a review. There's no new information in here, maybe other than the December 31st, 2024 deadline for official board action indicating withdrawal. So that's what I have to share.
Does anybody have any comments or questions for Dr. Daly on that?
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Now we come to our audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card available at the check-in table and give it to the Executive Director of Communications and Strategic Planning, Kathy, as stated in Board Policy 2-230. Public comments will be 45 minutes if necessary. The Executive Director will call community members who submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship with the district. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, but please know the board will be taking notes and will be in listening mode only, and an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We also ask that you submit one comment per opportunity. Kathy, do we have any comments?
We do not.
All right, next we have our consideration of resolutions. We have the 24039 personnel report, the 24040 payroll warrants, the 24041 vendor warrants, the 24042 FY 2025 tentative budget and call for public hearing, the 24043 prevailing rate of wage resolution, the 24044 authorization to advance payment of summer warrants, the 24045 annual certification of hazardous conditions, the 24046 press policy 5:100, and the 24047 embrace contract. Are there any questions? Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
So moved, Baumstark.
Second, Stefani.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Nelson.
Aye.
Supos.
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
Palovich absent.
Correct. Motions carries. Next, we have the consideration of other resolutions. Discussion and action. We have the 24048 strategic plan. Are there any questions? It was presented last month. Another one of the jobs that Kathy did for us. Thank you.
I assume no changes from last month's presentation.
If I've heard no changes from the board,
All right, can I have a motion and a second to approve the strategic plan as presented?
So moved, Baumstark.
Second.
So,
Let's let the cloud
Yeah.
be the
Speak.
second. All right, Gabby, may I have a roll call when you have a chance?
Supos.
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Dolan.
aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Baumstark.
Aye.
And Nelson.
Aye. Motion passes. We have a strategic plan through 2027 now. Thank you.
and since we have an approved plan, maybe let's take a minute to see the highlights of the plan. I'm really glad that there's nothing that changed because
Oh, because the presentation is coming.
This would have been a problem.
maybe a little bit.
Thanks to the strategic plan approved in 2019, we know our mission in District 34.
Aspire. Explore.
Discover.
Connect.
Aspirar. Explorar. Descubrir y conectar.
Inspire, explore, discover, connect.
Maghangad, magkalugad, magtuklas, makipag-ugnayan.
Pyramids. Ilki. Ligmund.
Yarmouth, come home, Falyon, Youngjo.
Aspire.
Explore.
Discover.
Connect.
District 34's 2024 to 2027 strategic plan moves that mission forward, connecting it with clear goals and action-oriented strategies to reach them.
Our previous strategic plan set a very solid foundation for where our school district was heading. Our current plan allows us to build on what we've done and create new pathways forward.
Created under the guidance of a representative task force and with deep and thoughtful input from students, staff, families, and community members, the goals of this plan are belonging and well-being, creativity and innovation, collaboration and community.
The process was really inclusive, and what was amazing about it is being able to hear all the different voices. There were so many different stakeholders at the table.
I think these are right goals for our people, for our community. I feel like it has included everything what I was dreaming, what I was thinking.
I think these are the perfect goals for our district. I can really see the input from our community, from our teachers, from our administration, our students, community members, and parents.
It was really cool to be able to present our ideas, to have like my voice heard throughout the district, especially as a student. It's really cool to have like leaders of our district with the students in the same room.
We were talking about what students want to be seen and heard, and you know, the district just straight up, it's like they were like, okay, we'll listen.
The simplicity of the plan is what's so beautiful about it, the simplicity of the language.
makes it actionable and that we can refer back to those shared values on a daily basis. The process of refreshing our strategic plan this year absolutely landed us on the right goals and the right values that reflect our entire community.
You can really see District 34's future when you look at this plan.
See the full plan at glenview34.org/plan. And join us on our path forward as we continue to
Inspire, explore, discover.
Nicely done.
That's great. Thanks again.
Awesome.
All right, next we have our 24049 administrator and exempt staff compensation. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Dorkin? Can I ask for a motion and a second to approve the administrator and exempt staff compensation as presented?
Wait for the cloud. Okay, so moved.
Second.
No.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Stefani.
Aye.
Supos.
Aye.
Dolan.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Baumster.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, next we have the 24, hold on, let me get the numbers right. 24048, $5 million from working cash to capital projects.
Yes. And this is something we talked about last month. We've been talking about it for a while now, finally looking to get this last remaining transfer, $5 million from working cash bonds over to capital projects to expend for construction this summer.
Are there any questions? All right, can I have a motion and a second to approve the $5 million from working cash to capital projects as presented?
So moved.
Second. Baumster.
Gabby, may I have a roll call?
Dolan.
Aye.
Moon.
Aye.
Baumster.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Supos.
Aye.
Stefani.
Aye.
Motion carries. And next, we have the wait, what's the numbering's not right on
2425.
yeah, 2425 Illinois State Board of Education Consolidated District Plan. I think that should be different number though. I think it's 24051. Yes. There we go. Is there any questions about the consolidated plan? We've been doing this the last few years. It's the same as it was, right? James?
My own question is just a matter of, how much time do we spend? And I can follow up with Dr. Silverman offline, but I know this process is pretty tedious. I have like a couple operating questions on if there's a way that we can make this more efficient for the cabinet.
Well, that would be amazing. But it's an Illinois State Board of Education, good old-fashioned process. Now, fortunately, between Kristen and her team, Raquel, myself, actually Kathy, Brian we all collaborate and come together around this plan. But yeah, it's a massive entry of information. But actually, all this work on the front end cleans up and clears up and actually makes a more efficient submission of all of our state and national grants. So IDEA, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. It's a massive amount of sharing of information between us and the Illinois State Board of Education. So this is typical ISBE. I wish it wasn't. And weirdly, a lot of the data we are entering and sharing with them, they already have. So we're always like, this, Illinois State Board of Education. Okay, we will confirm that you have this information. So anyway.
Okay, so it's at least used in like multiple other venues. So like doing it one time in this fashion allows us to do or submit that same entry or same kind of narrative with data, et cetera, to other purposes.
Yeah, so before the district consolidated plan, it's actually relatively new. We actually, for each of those grants, so IDEA would have to pretty much submit this information like around MTSS, services to children, like the immense amount of information that Kristen works within. Then Raquel would be doing that for Title I. I would be doing that for Title II, Title IV. This actually does bring it all to one central place. And then for the back end of all those entitlement grants, yeah, the information's used there and it's already done. So I don't know, in the long run, I want to believe it saves time and energy.
It saves time and energy from the previous way. It's still a lot of time and energy though, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks to you and everybody else who contribute pulling this together. It's daunting. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion and a second to approve the Illinois State Board of Education Consolidated District Plan as presented?
So moved, Baumstark. Second, Supos.
Gabby, can I have a roll call?
Baumstar,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Supos,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Moon.
Julie?
Sorry, aye.
Motion carries. And finally, we come to our 24052 Springman Construction Change Order.
Yep, so this is a change order. You know, we've asked the board for the authority for Steve to accept change orders up to $100,000. This is for $129,000. This puts 2 bathrooms inside the Springman cafeteria, similar to a TIA. And this is just something they can kind of do in the field here. So we're asking for approval on this change order.
Any questions?
And we said this cuts down the commotion during lunch of kids having to.
And people, SRO, supervising students as they go to the restroom in the hallway, things like that.
Okay.
Seems like a safety issue. I'm glad it's being addressed.
Yes, thank you.
Have a motion and a second to approve the Springman Construction Change Order report, change order as presented.
So moved, Baumstark. Second, Supos.
Gabby, may I have another roll call?
Moon,
Julie?
Sorry, I'm it's not hearing my name sometimes here. Aye.
Baumstar,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Supos,
Aye.
Stefani,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next we are coming to our discussion section. Operating rate option.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand.
Wasn't that Siri?
That is, yes, that was Siri.
Is that me?
They've taken over the world.
Dr. Deli will explain it right now.
I understand. Siri, would you please explain? So this topic this evening is really part of what is an ongoing conversation and challenge for our school district. And I thought it was important really to talk about what I perceive to be an important intersection when it comes to managing our overall budget. We hear presentations from CFAC from time to time. We, of course, hear from Eric Miller from time to time. You know, the current and future state of the budget. We predict future budgets as best we can with a lot of unknown variables many times, you know, some of which we're confident about, some are truly guesses. But I thought it important this evening to talk about some of the district's current challenges and looking at some options for the board to consider. So currently, as I said, the administration and CFAC both projected deficit spending to start in fiscal year 26. As a result of that, and I think prudently and not waiting until that time to make adjustments to the budget, we did identify several budgetary efficiencies the result of which pushed our projected deficit spending to fiscal year '27. We all recall some of the difficult decisions that were made in both in making the recommendation and then ultimately the board acting on those recommendations. But we did reduce FTE positions in primary reading enrichment, EL services, special ed services, district level administration and support staff. We reduced expenses in transportation through efficiencies with our bus routes, reduced equipment and supply budget lines. All department budgets saw reductions. Like I said, though, the net of which did help us temporarily put off what we project to be a budget deficit, which is what the next slide indicates. So we start with fiscal year '27 because we stabilized fiscal year '26. But in fiscal year '27, we're projecting a $400,000 operating budget with, arguably with the size of our budget, is not really an alarm bell. But you see what happens incrementally in those next 2 years, where fiscal year '28 is estimated at $1,250,000 and then close to $3 million by '29. I think it's important for us, next slide, Kathy, thank you.
Eric's got it.
To really, and I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but there aren't a lot of additional levers to pull in terms of right-sizing our budget. We are a school district that has traditionally run rather tight. We're going to have some slides subsequently when Eric speaks that hopefully illustrates for the community how we're positioned relative to other school districts in our township and in our surrounding area, and just the demographics of the community that we serve. It's very difficult for us to sustainably maintain a budget that is within the means that we have. So one option would be to continue our pattern of revisiting as necessary permanent and compounding budget cuts starting in fiscal year '26. So option one would be to continue to go into our budget, come up with a list of suggested reductions, operationalize those, and see how long the effect of that will take us. Another option, of course, and this has been suggested both by CFAC and even in public comments at some recent board meetings, about asking voters to consider an operating rate ballot question to raise additional revenue. Kathy. So when we talk about reducing expenses, we can use all kinds of different phrases. Budget cuts is really what we're talking about. And reducing or eliminating non-mandated programs and services and related staff is really where we're at. We went through this exercise both as a cabinet and as a board, and to make the necessary reductions to avoid what was depicted 2 slides ago in this compounding projected budget deficit, there's really no way to do that without touching programs and services and related staff. Just for a historical glimpse, we did go through in 2018. It was the year after I arrived. We went through a similar exercise. Well, it wasn't an exercise. It started out as an exercise, but it was actualized, where we reduced just over $1 million in operating expenses at that time. It should be noted that it's best practice to always be reviewing your budget as you go along. I mean, we are not a district that waits until there's a problem or a challenge and then address it. We're very proactive. When there are decisions to be made regarding FTE or contracted services, we're very diligent about trying to get the best pricing and to operate in the most efficient ways that we can. I believe we've demonstrated that. In 2024, as I indicated, we went through a similar process where we reduced expenses, and FTE were a part of that process. Simultaneously, we've seen increases in the areas of special education costs, salaries and benefits, those fixed items that are a part of a budget that are the result of a lot of different factors that I say are fixed. When we talk about increasing revenue, what does that allow us to do? If we had a little bit more money, and we'll talk about exactly what that looks like, what would it be? What would allow us to be able to do? Well, one, it can help us align with our strategic plan goals through the lens of financial sustainability. So the plan that you just approved is anchored in the district's financial sustainability. So to the extent, the plan's a great plan, to the extent that we can afford to execute. And so that's really one of the anchor points that I want to point out. The second is that it responds to recent community input. I mean, I don't have quantitative data. What I'm sensing from the community, and we've heard from the community, is they asked us to consider other options than just going back into the budget and making reductions. There was discontent over that. It's a difficult process. It's difficult for me and my team to come up with those recommendations. It's difficult for a board to balance all of the various interests within the community around a budget. It's challenging. So it helps us that way. And it allows for expansion of innovative, high-impact programs and services. It allows us to move away from the time and emotional energy that's spent on trying to identify efficiencies and making cuts, and repurposes that time and emotional energy into creating and identifying unique and innovative programming that ultimately helps students and teachers do their work with students. A distinction I think that's important before I turn this over to Eric is that we have capital and operating expenses. Capital expenses, they fund building construction, facility upgrades, renovations. We had a successful capital referendum. Those dollars don't get commingled with paying people, for instance, or providing for the supplies and materials for an instructional program. Then you have operating expenses, which are just that. It's salaries and benefits and building maintenance and materials. So it's people and programs and transportation and those things that go into our daily operations as a district. Different funds, different purposes, and they're earmarked specifically that way. Tonight we're just talking about operating expenses and how we might be able to identify some relief. Eric, would you walk through just kind of the general financial picture of what we're talking about?
Absolutely, thanks, Dane. So this is a slide that we've shown before. We've updated it now. It's our expense and our revenue projection over a 5-year period. Again, what you'll see is that in FY26, both lines sort of meet, and in FY27, they begin to pull apart with your expenses exceeding your revenues. Like Dane said, quickly getting up to a near $3 million deficit.
Can I ask a question? Are the lines wrong?
I think the legends are backwards.
Yes, revenues and expenses are flip-flopped.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here we're showing property taxes per student. So what Dane is talking about is an option to increase revenues. As you guys are probably tired of hearing me say already, most of our money comes from property taxes. But when you strip everything else away, what we've shown on the screen here is a chart with the Northfield Township District, so that's 27, 28, 30, 31, and District 34, what you see is the average is $22,260, but 34 well below that. In fact, 34% lower than the average. So we're already at a disadvantage when it comes to competing, trying to offer competitive wages and a compensation package. So this sort of boils down and really shows you how we're approaching, or what we're able to approach our education process with in terms of resources. The other one, what we're talking about today here, is a property tax rate, increasing that rate to get additional property taxes. So again, we're showing the township districts, and the average rate, 2.7, and we're still sitting with the lowest rate in the township. In fact, it's 14% below average. So again, just another way to show you that our dollars and our rates are below our neighbors. Again, looking at the township districts, this time adding a 16.4 cent increase to our rate would now, that's what you're looking at on the screen here, now the average is 2.8. District 34 still 7% below the average, even after the increase. So
The increase you're going to present,
the
correct?
increase that we're presenting today, yes. Operating expense per student. This time we're looking at all of the True North districts you just heard Dr. Deli speak about. There's 18, including us, District 34. The average is $25,171. District 34 spends $20,388, 23% less than the average. So there's a theme happening here, whether it talks about property taxes, our expense, our rate. We always seem to be the low district on the totem pole compared to the data set. Again, operating expense per student for the township, average almost 23,000. We're still at 20, it's 13% below the average. And finally, another slide that we tend to show here at this table is CFAC's historic and future projected fund balance. So that's our savings account. And the green being, 60% and more fund balance, a safe zone to be in. Yellow, sort of a cautionary, a place to sit with your fund balance, and then red, obviously, a place that we don't want to be. If you update the projections and show where our fund balance is, you're seeing here what it would look like in FY29, only 4 months of cash on hand. I will point out that between 24 and 25, as we've got a series of fund balance contributions to construction, but even after that, you still see the trend line going in the wrong direction, headed toward the red. And now I'm going to ask Elizabeth Hennessy from Raymond James, the district's municipal advisor, to come join us and go over a couple more slides that could contemplate this 16.4 cents that I just mentioned and how it could play out in our finances.
Thanks, Liz. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. Okay, so, the district has had successful capital. Are you gonna go?
Yes.
Okay. The voters in the district, have approved a $119 million bond referendum for district-wide facility improvements. So that was excellent, and I was talking with Dane earlier about, where you are on those projects and coming to the end in the next couple of years. So that's wonderful to address the facilities, but that only addresses facilities. Those bond proceeds may not, by law, be used for operating expenses. So now with inflation impacting operating budgets, reduced federal funding post-COVID, operating reductions in programs and staff may be necessary without additional revenue. So similar to what you were speaking about. This next slide is an example of a limiting rate increase. That's the way you increase the operating funds to the district by referendum. This example is for $5 million or 16.43 cents per 100 of EAV. The total average tax rate in Glenview for the year 2022, 23 is not released quite yet, is 7.409 cents. That's the tax rate per 100 for the average taxpayer in Glenview. The 16-cent increase would represent a 2.2% increase in that tax rate. So per 1,000 of taxes paid, if you look at how much you pay in property taxes a year, divide it by 1,000, it's going to be $22.18 increase per 1,000 of taxes paid. Yes, sir.
Can I just ask a quick question so everyone knows that when you say total average tax rate in Glenview, that includes all municipal taxes
It does.
collected? So mosquito abatement district,
Cook County,
Oakton, Cook County,
Metwater,
Metropolitan Water Reclamation,
225.
Village of Glenview,
Park District.
225, Park District. And I did get mosquito abatement district
You
in
did.
there too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that that's not our rate. That's all, the whole rate.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to put in perspective for you is what increase this is on your total tax bill, not just District 34. Let's go to the next page. And sorry if this is small for you guys trying to read it, but this is another way to look at it. Looking at the market value of homes starting at $100,000 and going up to $1 million, we can see the impact of this 16-cent tax rate increase. Now, just to go through the formula so you can recall what your tax bill looks like, especially as you get that second installment in September, that's where they're going to point out what Cook County values your home at. It's not what necessarily what you can sell your home for in the open market is what Cook County says the value of your home is. And it's important when we talk about that, that we're looking at the right number. So people do use that tax bill as a reference. So in Cook County, we have a 10% residential assessment percentage. Then we have the equalization factor, which we now know for 2023 is 3.0163. And that factor is an attempt by the Department of Revenue to bring Cook County method of valuing property to the statewide average of 1/3 of market value. Okay, so we always have this factor, it changes every year. Next, we have the homeowner's exemption. So if you own your home here in Glenview, you're an Illinois Glenview or resident, you are entitled to a $10,000 reduction or exemption on the equalized assessed valuation. So that then brings you to an equalized assessed value of your home, which then is multiplied times that tax rate increase per $100. You always divide by $100. And then we get the tax impact. So you can see for the $100,000 home, it's $33.14. You go up to $200,000. It's not, you don't just multiply it because of the homeowner deduction, which is a stable number. It's not a ratio that moves with the value of the home. So that's why we kind of show all these different values. So if you own a home valued at $1 million, the tax impact of the 16 cents would be $479. So just to give a range to see what $5 million costs the homeowner. Let's go to the next page.
Can I just
Yep.
clarify for people that, so if you, the average house in Glenview is about $550,000, I think, right now. So if you have a $500,000 home, it would cost you $231 more.
Correct.
If we get this approved.
Yes. And the next page shows just exactly that. So again, the top looks at the $5 million, the 16 cents, the 2.2%, and then we look at the taxes that you may have paid in 2022, looking at dollar amount from $1,000 up to $23,000. And then we look at the $500,000 market value home, which is close to the average, according to Zillow, on sale value. So that shows that the property taxes paid in 2022 were $10,433. The impact of this referendum, if the board determines to move forward with $5 million, is $231. Okay, so you can kind of look at the amount of taxes you paid and go across a page to see what this might mean. And then this next page is the ballot language. Now, the limiting rate is very formulaic, and the lawyers, you must stick to this language, or else you could have a lawsuit that says this question is invalid. You have to follow what the statute sets forth for the limiting rate increase. So for $5 million, what we would look at here is the amount equal to 0.164% above the limiting rate for levy year 23, that's last year, for the purpose of funding educational programming and instruction and for other school purposes, and be equal to $2.653% of the EAV of the taxable property therein for levy year 2034. So what this basically means is that we're taking your tax rate from up to 2.653% for levy year 24. And instead of CPI plus new property, that does not occur. It just fixes the rate. We have a little guessing in here because nobody knows what 24 EAV is going to be. It's not a reassessment year. We do know that. So whatever that EAV is times that rate is the dollars you get. And based on 23, we're estimating that will give you $5 million. So then the rest of these lines are what we call below the ballot little paragraphs that you'll see on the ballot question. They talk about the amount of property taxes extendable for the most recently extended limiting rate is the 75.6 million, and if the proposition is approved, it would become 80.7 million. Again, the difference being about 5 million. The next line talks about the 2024 levy year approximate amount of additional taxes for a $100,000 market value home. And you might say, well, gee, you just told me that was $33, yet this says $49. Back to the statute. The statute does not let you reduce the homeowner deduction. And I will not get into why they don't, but if you don't have a homeowner deduction, you don't own a home in Glenview. You may have your home in Florida, that may be your residence, and then you're, have another home here. So that's the type of confusion it is on the ballot question, which is why there's communication, very important to be involved as for a limiting rate as any question. And then the last paragraph simply says that if the proposition is approved, the aggregate extension for 24 will be determined by the limiting rate set forth in the proposition rather than the other applicable limiting rate calculated under the property tax limitation law.
So if this passes, we don't actually have to issue a levy that year, do we? Because it's automatic?
Well, if the bond resolution, or if the board puts a resolution on for November, which is the last time really that you can get on the 24 levy, unless you get some exceptions. I'm not going to talk about that because it's confusing. Then you will do a levy. You still have to do a levy.
But it'll be based on if it passes or not.
Right.
Thank you.
Exactly. If it passes, it will be this. If it doesn't pass, it will be CPI
CPI plus new
plus new
construction.
property.
Yeah.
Yeah. And CPI this year is 3.4%.
And then the last slide, sorry, we just skipped over it, was a timeline, just to give you a sense of when the board would have to pass the resolution, when early voting starts, and obviously Election Day, November 5th.
All right. Who wants to start with some questions?
I'll start with some simple questions, Eric. Just for the sake of everybody listening, two-part question. why is having a low fund balance such a risk for us? And part B, if this passes, where does this place us forecast in terms of, are we gonna be running a surplus? Are we just pushing it down 5 years and we have to do this again?
Right.
You know,
So as we've discussed over the past year, fund balance is a savings account used for rainy days. So when the county, who's extending our taxes that we heavily rely on, is 4 months late, we use fund balance to try and get through that period. When construction runs beyond budget and we need to dip into our fund balance to help at least finish the work that we had originally started, we go to fund balance. So fund balance is our rainy day savings account. And you know, we've got board policy that says we don't want it to go below 25%, and then you've got rating agencies and ISBE and everyone else saying, you know, we'd prefer that you're up in the 50+ sort of range. That's why we get or have maintained a AAA bond rating, we get great rates, et cetera. The projection with a $5 million influx in 1 year will buy us somewhere in the ballpark of 7 to 10 years, depending on how things go. We would be showing larger surpluses at first, and then because we're always battling expenses being in line with revenues, over a period of time, it will again reach that that pivotal sort of point in which you're battling up against your expenses.
Crystal ball says, but it's too far out.
Exactly. Unfortunately, in the mid-90s, when the tax cap came into play, that always made it so that we're fighting an uphill battle against our revenues and expenses. So I think it would buy us about 7 to 10 years.
Thank you.
Based on the presentation, and if we did this ask, we would still be spending less money than the 4 other feeder districts at 225?
Well, we would then be the second lowest.
Second lowest
in
rate.
terms of rate.
Rate. I'm talking about spent per student.
Yeah,
or
that's a little harder to predict how everyone else spends, but we're definitely going to be more competitive.
Right. We're not trying to be the top dog, though. We're just trying to keep up with our neighbors that our kids go to school with.
That's right.
Diane.
What percentage of the taxable property in Illinois currently has a District 34 resident residing in their house?
Say that one more time.
What percentage of the taxable property in, and you may not be able to answer this now, I wouldn't expect that you necessarily would, or maybe it was answered and I just missed it, but what percentage of the taxable property that is included in Glenview, Illinois currently has a current District 34 resident residing in the home?
Resident or student?
Student.
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 I
Current.
don't think we can tell.
It's around 20%, or it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm asking that for a lot of reasons, but I mean, I think it just gives us a sense too of, you know, the community's possible perception.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked about with the last referendum, how much of the households actually had a student in it. I think it was between 20 and 25%.
I think it was
I'd be curious to know
28.
what it currently
Or
is.
maybe
Yeah,
28,
yeah.
That might be something to look at, just because I think that helps us kind of assess, like, you know, talking to the community
Yes,
about it.
I'll follow up.
But it also affects house prices. Good schools bring people buying houses.
I have a lot of reasons why I'm asking the
Yeah.
questions, it's not just one.
Any other questions for Eric or Liz?
I don't have a question, but I just have like a perspective that I think is interesting to share. When I think about the reason our fund balance has taken the dip, I think it goes back to COVID, right? Basically, it cost us quite a bit more to do our renovations because inflation really outperformed our expectations, primarily because of COVID. But we also had another benefit from that, which was we were able to issue our debt at extremely low rates, and there was a mismatch there. Like, we incurred all the cost of having to spend more on the buildings, but the taxpayers at large got the benefit of the extremely low rate of issuance. And so I guess one perspective I bring to this is this could be a way of almost like equating it. Like, we're trying to replace the fund balance. And so in some ways, like, we're favorable outcome from the low debt issuance, and this could be thought of as a way to kind of just get it back to where maybe they thought it was going to be when they voted for the capital referendum in the first place. And so that's,
No, it's interesting.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
part of that discussion where we talked about, I believe our all-in rate, Liz, was about 1.43% over 18 years because we lowered our duration by 2 years also. So I'm pretty sure we saved the taxpayer by speeding up our issuance almost $30 to $40 million.
economic value that was
It's
more
amazing.
than the extra cost from the inflationary impact.
So I mean, part of that speaks to this board and district's ability to make sure that we're representing the taxpayer as best as possible. We're trying to be good financial stewards as we move forward. And part of this decision to ask this is showing that we're good financial stewards over time. Is there more presentation?
Eric, were you going to share a slide, was someone going to share slide 8, I think it's, or 18? It's very relevant.
Yes.
Unless I missed it.
No, this is, I skipped over this one as well.
It's important, yeah.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, let's not forget, November of 2000, we had a successful capital referendum to build a TIA, and at the same time, a question was put on the ballot for an operating rate that failed. In April of 2001, went back out again, and the district, the community turned that one down. So since then, essentially, the district has been working at a disadvantage to try and help fund the school. While there were make-whole payments that sort of just met the cost to educate each kid, but funding that, there was an uphill battle. And then obviously in March 2020, we had a successful capital referendum to update all of our buildings and put up the additions for full-day kindergarten. But it's been a long while, and I think we're finally starting to see that catch up to us.
So you can make an argument that because we've been staffing 8 schools with the amount of money that they still had for 7 when a TIA was built, that we weren't able to maintain our buildings over those 25 years and had to ask for that money in 2020, which the community overwhelmingly supported at 65% to 35%. So now it's time to ask the community again, I think, to right-size us to fully staff our buildings as we move forward. And kudos to all the school boards over the last 25 years that have been able to do this work to let us get to this point where the can is finally time to fill up.
Yep.
Anything else?
Timeline.
Dr. Donnelly? Timeline. That's an important one.
So unfortunately, there's not a lot of time between now and when the board has to pass the resolution. The next time the board meets will be in August, and that'll be the last time that the board has to vote and put that ballot question on the ballot.
So it's still a question. It's okay to ask the community. The nice part is we have to ask the community for this money. We haven't been keeping it in our bank all this time. We get to ask the community that's been able to keep this over the last 25 years, is now the time to give us a little bit more.
Well, and I would say in addition to the projections that we've shared in terms of when we anticipate this deficit spending to begin, you know, you have to backwards map that an additional year, because it's really the year prior to that you're doing the work in identifying what those possible reductions would look like. So it's that coupled with, by most people's accounts, you know, I'm not a pollster and I don't get into that kind of business, but this is shaping up to be an election whereby there is expected to be large voter turnout, which I think is a better opportunity for the board to get the perspective of the community in terms of how they feel about this. I mean, more people will be turning out to vote just because of other factors. It's a presidential election, and I think we'll have a a robust audience of community members to help make this decision for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this allows us to get a really good finger on the pulse of where the community would like us to fall. And I'd always like to say that nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I'd hope that the board would be willing to put this on the agenda and vote on this in August. It's like I said, it's just an ask right now. The community will tell us if we're allowed to do it.
It does seem like there would need to be a pretty good communication plan in place. If you read that proposal, and if you just ask people to show up and read that, who's going to vote yes? Like it's.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up, Jim. So between now and the time that you would authorize a question like this to go to the ballot, we will develop a communication plan that will demonstrate the how and the what and the when.
And the why, more importantly.
And the why. Yeah, all those essential questions, but in a way that tells what I think is a compelling story in a succinct manner. I mean, much of what you've seen presented here, you would see in educational materials that we would be sending out to the community.
And a lot of this builds on what we talked about 5 years ago when we brought up the last referendum. Diane?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for everyone to understand too that when we had our last referendum, nobody could have foreseen when we voted at that time the complete unexpected events that took place after we voted. And I think that that's key to understanding why we're at where we're at now.
Good point.
You guys have any?
Will there
There we go. Go ahead, Julie.
will there be a need for like community member involvement to help with the messaging, or this time like what happened with the last referendum?
Groups that are affiliated with the district operating to support the efforts of I mean, that could certainly happen. That would need to be grassroots. It's not district work, but we would certainly be open to hear from people who would be interested in supporting the cause. I think that's what you're referring to.
That wasn't driven by the district in the past either.
Right.
No.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if there would be need to have like a community members kind of help lead the charge on to also help with the communication that, you know, the district obviously will have messaging as well, but
Hopefully there's a robust group of parents that support this that would be able to talk to the 75% of community members that don't have students here.
Got it. That would be great.
Any other discussion?
I would just add that, I mean, directionally, is it okay for us to continue work on this and, you know, prepare a resolution and as we approach it? The time will go fast, so.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Like I said, it's an ask. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. We just went through a large discussion about spending time. Now we're talking about the other side of the equation. I think it's important that we give the community a chance to support us in this manner too.
Very curious to hear what the community has to say.
We will find out in November if we get on the ballot.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and always feel free to forward questions. If you need more information, we're happy to provide it. Ask questions, happy to help understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Always good to see you. Kathy, we're back to audience comments. Do we have any audience comments?
We do not.
Okay. Next, we have the report section. We have the number 1 FOIA report, the number 2 True North Board meeting report, The number 3, construction change order report. The number 4, referendum expense report. The number 5, monthly budget report. The number 6, current year financial projections. And number 7, following meeting agenda. Are there any questions on those? Is there any other business? All right, we are adjourned.